Soran and the Wise Fairy. At the foot of Green Mountains, there was a village where very poor people lived. In one corner of this village, a boy named Soran lived with his parents in a small mud cottage. Soran's father went to the city every morning and worked as a laborer for rich people until nightfall. His mother was ill and had nothing to offer her family except her loving and kind gaze. Soran dreamed of saving his parents from poverty and illness. Whenever he saw wealthy people, his heart ached for his mother and father. His only comfort was a black crow named Crowley. Whenever Soran felt sad, Crowley would sit on his shoulder, as if trying to help him forget his worries. One evening, Soran was sitting alone and sad beneath a tree. It had been 2 days since he had last seen Crowley, and he feared something bad had happened to his friend. Just then, Crowley appeared, carrying a letter in his beak. Surprised, Soran took the letter and gently opened it. Inside, these words were written: "In the king's palace lives a wise fairy. She knows everything and can answer every riddle, except one. Whoever asks a riddle that the wise fairy cannot answer will be rewarded by the king with a great chest full of jewels." As Soran read the letter, his hands began to tremble and his heart beat faster. A chest of jewels meant saving his parents from sickness and poverty. But how? He barely knew how to read and write. How could he possibly ask a question the wise fairy could not answer? After sunset, Soran returned home. His father was asleep from exhaustion, and his mother was writhing in pain. As tears quietly fell from his eyes, Soran whispered to himself, "My dear father and beloved mother, I will try my best, even if I fail." The next morning, Soran took a notebook and wrote down several very difficult questions. Then he said goodbye to his father and set off toward the king's city, a place far from their village, along a long and difficult road. At last, after a hard and exhausting journey, Soran reached the king's city. Near the palace, he saw a long line of people who had come to test their luck. One by one, they entered the palace and asked their questions. The wise fairy, sitting calmly in a pool of magical water, answered everyone with a gentle smile. Soran joined the line and waited for 2 days. During this time, he realized that everyone who entered returned disappointed. When he compared his own questions with those of others, he lost hope. His questions were far too simple for the wise fairy to fail. So he left the line and walked out of the city. Soran walked and walked until he reached a small pond, where he sat down beside the water. His heart was full of sorrow and regret. He could not forgive himself, for he had promised to make his parents happy. He cried so much that he fainted and fell to the ground near the pond. Some time later, Soran felt better and approached the water. Night had fallen, and the moonlight shimmered in the sky. As he washed his face, Crowley landed on his shoulder and began to caw. At that moment, Soran noticed a reflection in the water, a sad boy with a crow on his shoulder. Suddenly, a wonderful idea came to his mind, and a smile appeared on his lips. With Crowley by his side, Soran returned to the palace and once again stood in line. Just like before, he had to wait for his turn. It was difficult, but this time he carried a question unlike any other. a question born from seeing himself. It seemed simple, yet it was deep and thought-provoking. Finally, after 2 days, it was Soran's turn. He entered the palace and stood before the wise fairy. He closed his eyes for a moment and thought about all he had been through. The wise fairy said kindly, "Son, aren't you here to ask your question?" "Yes," Soran replied, "but my question comes in the form of a story." And then he told his tale. Soran said, "In a distant village, there lived a boy whose parents were poor. His father worked as hard as he could, and his mother suffered from illness. He dreamed of saving his parents from poverty and sickness. One day, his crow brought him a letter that said, 'In the king's palace lives a wise fairy. She knows everything except one question. Whoever asks a riddle she cannot answer will receive a great chest of jewels from the king.'" The boy went to the king's city. Near the palace, he saw many people trying their luck. Every question they asked was answered easily by the wise fairy. "They say there is no riddle she cannot answer, except one. Now tell me, what question should that poor boy ask so that the wise fairy cannot answer it, and the chest of jewels will become his?" When Soran finished speaking, a strange silence filled the palace. Everyone waited to see what the wise fairy would say. She stood frozen, astonished. She could either say "I don't know," or reveal the very question she could not answer. Moments later, the wise fairy finally spoke. "Well done, my boy. You have won. You have placed me in a trap where no matter what I answer, you are the winner. Truly, the chest of jewels belongs to you." At that moment, everyone applauded Soran. The king rose and praised Soran's intelligence and wisdom. With tears of joy in his eyes, Soran thanked the king and the wise fairy. That day, Soran returned proudly to his village with the jewels he had received. The king's servants accompanied him all the way home. Happily, he entered his house and offered everything to his parents. Soran taught people more than sacrifice and love. He taught us that to reach our dreams, we must begin with ourselves. The only riddle that can unlock all closed doors is the story of our own lives.